Oh shit! Stanley Kubrick's retelling of Stephen King's The Shining, starring Jack fucking Nicholson and Shelley Duvall, is one of those films that you have to like. If you don't like it, you don't like movies. If you clicked on this video and are somehow offended already, then firstly, buckle up, because you've heard nothing yet. But secondly, the reason why you're offended is because you know what I'm about to say here, you cannot dispute, no matter how hard you try. If this isn't one of your favourite horror movies, then in the eyes of everybody, your opinion is invalid. But for the few that are honest with themselves, the few that really don't care about this film, and for the ones sick of hearing about how great it apparently is, then this is for you. This is for you guys. Hopefully, I mirror some of your guys' feelings, and hopefully, you can gain something from this. So let's fucking go! The Shining, the film. I'm not doing why the book sucks, because the podcast/channel is called Horror Movies Suck. I don't have time in my life to read the book. I've got your mom calling me back every 5 minutes telling me how great I am. The book ain't a priority. Now, depending on the website, if it ain't The Exorcist, the greatest horror film is in fact The Shining. Well, no, it isn't. And my job today is to tell you why. So grab your gentleman's jack and let's get into it. So when it comes to you guys and your horror movie opinions, I feel like I'm almost dissing you guys. Like I'm Nas and you're Jay-Z, right? You know you lost already. But when it comes to The Shining is literally just another haunted house film where the characters fly right over the cuckoo's nest. Ha! See what I did there? Because they are stuck in pure isolation in the middle of nowhere. But it's also a character drama about a guy who's clearly an asshole to begin with. Now with that information, that is in fact given to you in the first few scenes. The whole I'm a psycho, I want to bash your brains in thing isn't really a surprise. But if your naive ass is still surprised, this guy's occupation is literally a writer. His head is so far up his own ass, he's shitting his own words out onto the paper. Literally and figuratively. Also, kinda like the guy who wrote this fucking story. Mouth-ass syndrome. And speaking of, if you want to go deeper, this is a film based on a book by a guy who is wrongfully called one of the best writers of all time. A guy with 400 IMDb credits to his name. A guy whose work has been turned into some of the most popular films of all time, including shit that you wouldn't even expect, like The Green Mile and fucking Shawshank Redemption. Well, I say that, but you should probably know that if you're a fan of movies in general. But my point is, I don't think there's many people on this planet that have their head further up their own ass than Stephen King does. But why you may be surprised, or even shocked about Shawshank or Green Mile, is because Stephen King is most notorious as the so-called king of horror, which first of all is insulting to every other creative in the horror genre. But when you think of this guy's 4 biggest contributions to horror, Carrie, Pet Sematary, It, shit, and of course this shit, these movies are absolutely unimportant. I am going to do an episode for why each of these films are not worth watching. Especially It. It. More like shit, man. It's the fucking worst, man. I cannot believe in this current era this shit has been remade, and then even further that the remake has been given a fucking sequel that people for some reason care about. If that isn't definitively a completely perfect definition of why the general consensus of what is good or bad is almost always bullshit, then I genuinely don't know what is. But obviously, today's episode is the big one. The most important one, if any. The one that will get me crucified, burned alive, and sacrificed, all in the name of the king. But fuck it! I've got a responsibility here. Well, I don't. More of an obligation. Anyways, here's plot synopsis. And I must say, I really gotta say, there is a lot to this film, but a lot of things together don't make one good thing. That'll be an argument against this. There is a lot to this film and you just don't get it. No, motherfucker. I get it perfectly fine. This isn't some sort of mindfuck film, right? This isn't the sort of film that could pull off a usual suspect style ending on the audience and make it work. And lots of things combined don't make one thing worthwhile. Like, for example, imagine, this is going quite far out by the way. Well, it really isn't. My first example was going to be the Nazis, so realistically this is not going that far. But imagine if you took all of the shit food that you have in your kitchen and mixed all of it together into a dish of some sort. What are the chances that that would taste any good? Fucking next to none. What did all these foods that tasted decent to pretty good on their own taste great mixed all together? No, they fucking didn't. They tasted fucking vile. But, back to the plot synopsis. The characters of Jack Torrance, a writer, an all-round nutcase, Wendy, his wife, and Danny, their son, who is some sort of psychic, or some bullshit like that. They're all invited... Oh man. They're all invited to temporarily move in to this massive abandoned hotel as part of Jack's new career pasture of being the hotel's caretaker over the winter. Which of course, they do take the offer. The movie wouldn't fucking exist otherwise. Now this hotel, the Overlook Hotel it's called, has a dark history, including the previous caretaker murdering his entire family, his wife and his 2 daughters before killing himself. Yeah, this is a lovely place to take your wife and son. This is like taking your kids to the Sharon Tate house. Red flags should be going off about both of these parents straight away here. Another significant piece of plot worth mentioning. Jack dislocated Danny's shoulder during some sort of drunken rage a while prior to this film's events. He did apparently quit drinking after that, but regardless of that, I'm pretty fucking sure one can argue that Jack is already over the edge prior to setting foot in the Overlook Hotel, and he simply just wanted the excuse to go batshit crazy and kill his family. But I digress. Danny also had visions back before their move of the hotel, and specifically hundreds of litres of fake blood spilling out of an elevator and 2 twin sisters. This is called foreshadowing, by the way. But this foreshadowing ruins the introduction of that set piece and those characters. But they arrive at the hotel, and Jack and Wendy immediately get taken a tour of all the set pieces that you will end up seeing almost non-stop for the next 2 hours of your life, including the Golden Ballroom, the outside maze. Yes, this hotel for some reason has a stupidly massive fucking outdoor maze. The corridors, the main room, the snowmobile shed, because it's the fucking winter, and their living quarters. This is before they meet up with Danny, and then Wendy and Danny go on a wander with the chef, who is also a psychic and telepathically asks Danny if he would like ice cream casually. As you do. Yeah, people use telepathy all the time, don't they? But then shit gets serious, and he warns Danny about a certain room, 237 to be exact, and warns him about all the shit that goes on in the hotel as well. As if we aren't already sure that bro already knows all of this. Honestly, he probably already knows this. Also, I'll use this opportunity to say, I'm not wasting my time on Dr. Sleep. Psychic vampires, fuck you! Also, the hotel was apparently built on an Indian burial ground, which is also foreshadowing Pet Sematary, or making the plot of Pet Sematary a cliche by Stephen King standards. Well, I mean, it's not the only cliche I can draw. Obviously, Jack isn't the only famous character from Stephen King that is a fucking writer. This man is obsessed with his work, or slash himself, I swear. Both of them are, let's be honest, both Jack and Stephen King, they're both obsessed with their work and themselves. And Stephen King is obviously obsessed because every second character is a fucking writer. But then, there's a month jump into the future. Jack has clearly already lost the plot. He's obsessively stuck in his work, writing and writing and writing. Fucking nothing. He's writing so much, but he's writing fucking nothing. If he wrote anything, who the fuck knows? We know nothing about what he writes, but realistically, he's probably just writing a future autobiography, Minority Report style, about killing his family. This is the film's problem. The film relies on Jack's build-up from a normal family man to a psychopath lunatic. This is the problem with Jack Nicholson. He is great at playing psychopaths and bad guys, but he's not always that great at playing much else. This movie requires a build-up from a normal guy to a full-on psychopath due to his surroundings and his isolation. But Jack Nicholson plays him like he's been a psychopath since the first fucking scene. The idea of Jack's psychosis has been there since the first camera shot, and it basically ruins the character from a horror standpoint. What's so annoying about Jack as a character is that Jack Torrance could have actually been so much scarier as a character, but I am not going to fully blame this on Jack Nicholson, because all this ghost and psychic bullshit makes it much less scarier by default. This movie genuinely could have been a much better film if it got rid of all the bullshit psychic supernatural crap and instead was just a bare bones grounded horror film. Supernatural shit in monster movies are not scary. That's just a fact. Truth is scarier than fiction, and that's why the truly scariest horror films are the ones that mirror reality, as opposed to things like demons, vampires, zombies, and werewolves. I could go on this point for a long time, but to tie it back to the film, Jack could have been much better, and it's almost tragic because this film is essentially half a character drama and half a supernatural horror movie. But this also gives me the opportunity to make the separate point that if these films were in fact two separate movies, that would have been so much better than this clusterfuck of a film that was made instead. If they had been separated from each other and turned into individual films, as in take the supernatural shit and make Amityville Part 2, oh wait, that already exists, and take the character drama and make a psychotic character-based film, these movies alone would have been much better than the fucking mess that is The Shining. To compare this to another film based on Stephen King's work, Misery. Misery works so much better as a film than this because it's almost believable, especially given the height of stan culture in today's age. But honestly, hey, if anyone wanted to cash in on making a better movie than The Shining, remove the psychotic, telepathic, supernatural bullshit and make The Shining, but grounded and much more believable and realistic. Just make Jack a crazed axe murderer. But I digress yet again. Jack gets increasingly hostile with Wendy, all the while Danny is just non-stop riding around the hotel corridors on his trike. Until he has his first meeting with the twins, who were in fact the kids who were murdered by the last caretaker. But if you forgot, Danny also gets visions, and during this first meeting, Danny also gets visions of them after they've been axed up. Probably not the best first impression they've made on the poor boy, but anyways, Danny then afterwards does what everyone does in horror movies, which is the opposite of what they should do, and goes and looks in room 237. That action is such a cliche at this point that it might as well not be. The action of people in horror films doing the opposite of what they should do. All the while, Jack is at his desk having some sort of fucking weird sort of nightmare when he's woken up by Wendy. Hey, remember her? But then Jack goes on to describe his dream, and this is where he admits to Wendy how in his dream he killed Wendy and Danny and chopped them into tiny pieces. This is probably the worst time for Danny to show up with strangle marks on his neck, but that's what happens. Danny walks into the main room. I think it's the main room of the hotel. Yes, the main room of the hotel. Danny walks into the main room of the hotel with strangle marks on his neck. Wendy obviously blames this on Jack, and understandably so, seeing he's just told her that in his dream he dreamt that he had just killed and chopped Wendy and Danny both up. Of course, she fucking blames him. But in retrospect, this movie could have been so much better and so much shorter, might I add, if it went straight from this scene into the scene where Jack fully snaps and tells Wendy how he wants to bash her fucking brains in. But no, we get 40 odd minutes of bullshit. Jack goes and makes friends with all the ghosts, including going to a ball in the Golden Room and then meeting the past caretaker who killed his entire family. He also goes back to drinking and complains a bit about his wife. Sort of understandable, seeing she just blamed him for something he didn't do. But then, wife in question shows up and tells him there was a crazy woman in the hotel and that she strangled Danny. Of course, Jack then goes and has a look, and he actually finds the woman in question, who happens to be this absolute babe. Jack clearly forgets why he was in this room, and immediately all of his emotions are swallowed up by his penis, and he is drawn to the bitch. This is when he goes and cheats on his wife, just for the babe to almost melt away into this horrific looking walking corpse. It's actually pretty decent effects for the time, in all honesty, but man, the influence that drink can have on you. Holy fuck. He then goes back and lies to his wife, because of course you do. You don't want to tell your wife you kissed a corpse, that you wanted to fuck a ghost. Even if it ain't real, you don't tell her that. Another thing I forgot to mention is the telepathic chef from before, whose name is actually Dick Halloran, is telepathically called by Danny, who is clearly terrified. And he actually shows up, but that's for later. Although, spoiler alert, he makes next to no difference. Well, actually, he makes a little bit of a difference. But you can find out about that difference later on. So when Jack meets the caretaker tells him he must correct his family. Which of course means, dun dun dun! Here comes the pain! 45 minutes late, but better late than never. Jack gets into the proper psycho phase, which includes Jack taunting his wife before she knocks him out. This is obviously the fucking scene where he's like, I want to bash your brains in. But then Wendy just knocks him out with a baseball bat. KO'd the fucker. Do you know that would have been a great ending. If you just end it there, it's like, yeah, that's the whole film. That would have been the ultimate troll from Stanley Kubrick's part, and that would have been fucking awesome. But no, she locks him in the kitchen pantry, where he pleads with Wendy just for her to be hesitant but still leave him. She then runs outside to the snowmobile shed to find the snowmobile wrecked beyond use. Another cliche of horror films. As if this movie wasn't long enough, the ghosts can open doors. These fucking movies, man. It's like that scene in Jurassic Park where the velociraptors open doors, but even more unbelievable. So by the time that Jack is let out by the ghost, Wendy and Danny have headed back to the living quarters. They're trying to rest, believing that Jack was still down in the kitchen pantry. But nah. They basically are in for a rude awakening, and Danny, before all this happens, decides to write murder backwards on their wall. This lad is just like his dad. Speaking of, yeah, Jack has just got his ass up there. And here's Jackie! Wendy, I'm home! You know the scene. And it's the most famous scene in horror. And for the record, that's not because it's scary. It's because it's one of the most comical scenes in cinema. The actions by Jack are violent and the intent is brutal. But Jack Nicholson's performance in this scene, mixed with the dialogue, it's brilliant. But then you realise you've spent 2 hours trying to keep yourself awake, waiting for that one moment, and now it's gone. Speaking of gone, after Danny escapes out the window, and as soon as Jack is about to get in, Dick shows up in his snowmobile. Foreshadowing! But as soon as he shows face, Jack runs out and kills him. Rip, bro. After Dick's death, Jack, clearly pleased with himself, eagerly goes on to find Danny and sprints after him, axe in hand. All the while, Wendy is trying to find Danny and escape when she is met with the most horrifying scene one could ever see. A furry. No joke. A man in a bear costume performing what's the word that won't get me kicked off YouTube? Fellatio. But seriously, the fucking movie was the prime inspiration for furries. This movie made furries a thing, and that's the greatest sin of all. Without this movie, furries would not exist, and because of that, the world would be a much better place if this movie did not exist. Ah! The more I think about it, the more I want to end this episode entirely. Yeah, so Danny heads outside, all the while with Jack in pursuit. Danny then decides to run into the massive fucking maze, which should spell death, but obviously was just an excuse for that set piece to be used. Jack at this point is a bit further behind, but is also able to follow due to Danny's footsteps in the snow. And thank Christ, somebody finally decided they wanted to end this fucking shit show. Jack tails Danny for a little while, but all of a sudden, Danny grows a couple of brain cells and traces his steps back in the snow until he gets to a cut-off point in the maze where he can hide around the corner from the path. This is where his dad actually believes the trick that Danny has set up for him and walks right past him. And this is when Danny uses the time that he's gained to head back the way that he came, and just by pure luck and plot armour, this is where he finds his mother and they escape in Dick's snowmobile, leaving Jack in the snow to freeze to death, looking for his son and his wife. But then we get to the real ending. I say real ending, but it's literally just a zoom in of a shot of a picture on the wall of a ball from the 1920s or so, where Jack is front and centre in the picture, which is Stanley Kubrick and Stephen King trying to add in a mindfuck ending to this shit. Remember at the start I brought up Usual Suspects? as an actual mindfuck ending. Yeah, even though if either of these guys had any sense, they would realise by this point, after sitting this long watching this shit, most people couldn't be paid to care about what they think about it. Also, it's not that deep. The hotel is clearly just playing tricks on those around it, as it did with all three of them throughout the film. Everything happened as it did. And this ending means fucking nothing. The hotel just decided it wants Jack's face in all of its photos because it's Jack fucking Nicholson. But honestly, whatever else you come up with might as well be true. At this point, nobody really cares. The "Here's Johnny" scene is over. 90% of people have already skipped the rest and left the theatre. The 10% left are just gaslighting themselves into believing this shit is good. I'm going to go back to my original point for this episode here, which is to make up your own mind, motherfuckers. If you like it, you like it. And guess what? That's okay. But don't feel you have to enjoy something because the general consensus is that it is good. Opinions are subjective and are like assholes. Everybody has one. But with saying all of that, the general consensus is almost always wrong. The top 10 greatest horror film list is a joke. Almost all of those films suck absolute dog dick and don't deserve any of your time. But to wrap this up, bringing this back to The Shining, does the film have its moments? Sure it does. But a broken clock is right twice a day, and a couple of good moments don't make a good movie. 5 minutes of great cinema in a 2.5-hour film is unbelievable. I haven't spent that much time giving Stanley Kubrick that much shit, and that's not necessarily been on purpose, but what I will say is however many takes he took on every scene and how hard he pushed those actors, the imperfections I've discussed regarding this film are apparent as all fuck. And it's almost embarrassing to be this much of a control freak and still fail, and not only fail after all of that, but having that failure stick out as your most commercial film. It's a whole other level of embarrassment, and because of that, I've just got to be straight with you and tell you that The Shining sucks and it isn't scary. Woo! Yeah, the furry scene is the worst scene I've ever seen in my entire life. Just the thought of that scene makes me want to clean up my eyes with bleach. But to stop myself from doing that, I'm going to focus on another episode.